Well, salutations, my impervious Imperial subjects. Welcome back to the new Imperial Order, the one true and pure Empire. Last episode, we'd done a lot of settling, and in this episode, the Civil War begins. Now, wars are won by soldiers, and those soldiers need the proper equipment. Last episode, we started making a straight line for SRTS, skip ships and other types of ships, but in this episode, we're actually beginning with some research into fabrication, as it is a prerequisite for different types of armors, which are going to be important. As this research begins, we're also going to begin contacting the Orbital Traders Hub to request a few trade ships come our way, some exotic goods traders, and some combat supplier ships as well. Now, to go about distributing cataphract and recon armors among all of those soldiers within our empire, we do need to finish that research, but we can go ahead and arm our capital guard and soldiers with some by purchasing it. While we're waiting on them to get back to us on that, as well as the research that we were talking about, we're going to start on another little construction project here that's going to help us out in the war, but that would be rudely interrupted by a feral ghoul. This vicious, pale little goblin was coming right for us, and as it was trying to attack us, I noticed that it was actually firing at us like a firearm. It appears that this little creature somehow managed to get a bioferrite rifle arm, so that tells me that someone else seems to be experimenting with ghouls on the planet. Naturally, the only solution that we had was to put the poor little bastard out of its misery, so we went ahead and did so. But the question still remains, where did it come from? This attack doesn't seem deliberate, so that probably means it wasn't the current Shattered Empire that we're about to take down. Highly unusual. For now, we're gonna stuff the poor little creature in our freezer, and we'll end up resurrecting it at a later time. Maybe it'll prove useful to us. As for now, we need to get back to our construction of our biofuel refinery. That's right, baby, we're going to start making our own chem fuel, something that's needed to be done for quite some time now, especially given the fact that our capital city here lies right in the midst of a gigantic temperate forest. It only makes sense that a lot of the wood that we cut down we would end up turning into chem fuel. In case you're curious as to what we're going to be using all this chem fuel for, weapons of war. Why, of course, we're going to be making some mortar shells, and once we get them researched and what have you, we'll start making some more shrapnel and cluster shells as well. Sticking with the theme of war and our defenses as well as our offenses, we're going to be making ourselves a small little pillbox in the side of the hill here, just around the city entrance in the south. We're going to be filling it up with 4 mini turrets as well as some slate embrasures, allowing them to shoot towards the east and towards the south. Since this is where all the attacks come from, it only makes sense that we would put our automated defenses down here, something that has been long overdue. But running an empire isn't just all about war and defenses. There's also other things you have to handle, like some strange noises coming from caves, and occasionally you have to send in the military there as well. Actually, you know what? It's pretty similar to going to war, I guess. Just with a bit more bureaucracy, I suppose. Speaking of, Jenny is going to hop on the old comm there and do a little bit of trading with a combat supplier, where we would end up purchasing a recon helmet, armor, as well as some other weapons and things like that. Most importantly though, we ended up getting some cluster shells. Instead of making these, we've decided to purchase them since we have so much money from taxes anyway. As you can see, just lying all over the ground. And of course, we immediately began equipping some of our capital soldiers here with the new equipment that we had purchased, and boy oh boy do they look dapper. Very royal, I guess. Something else that has been long overdue is a brand new, more royal dining room. That way, we have a nice fancy place for our Empress to eat with all of our fine folks. For God's sake, people, we are no longer living in the slums of this world. We are the Empire and the new Imperial, or you know what, as you can see, I just made a very nice dining room. I'm not going to give you the whole speech and spiel, but as you can see, it is indeed much nicer, and everyone is much happier with this than they were with the previous one. Speaking of which, the old dining room and food storage area is now just solely going to be a food storage area somewhere ice cold. That way we can keep all of our meats and vegetables frozen, and it's also not too far away from the new dining training room, which is very important when trying to keep in mind efficiency. Yes, indeed, the capital continues to keep expanding and improving and moving right along, but as does our empire. Speaking of, we are also going to be making some improvements to it. First and foremost, we are going to be ramping up our production of firearms as well as other different types of weapons at firearm factories and smithies, of course, and our production of ammunition. We are going to be opening up several different types of mines to get the resources that we need to make bullets, because bullets go in guns and then guns fire the you know how it works, okay? As we were looking into improving our empire, it is quite vast. However, I do notice a severe lack of settlements in the southern hemisphere of the planet, which is a big problem because the current shattered empire has a well population down there, essentially giving them an iron grip on the entire southern hemisphere. Well, no more of that. We are going to be investing all of our taxes for 2 tax cycles, which is almost 2 months worth, into settling down in the southern continent here. Now, this is pretty great, but we can't have a bunch of fresh and new settlements on the southern continent down here getting taken over by the shattered if they decide to attack in the middle of the night, so we're also going to be building some training facilities. That way they're no longer wet behind the ears and they'll know how to defend themselves. Now, since we basically spent all of our taxes on settling the southern continent, the one in the southeast is going to be unoccupied for the time being, but after a few months pass, we'll be able to settle there as well. It's just going to take some time. In the meantime, back home, we had finished our research into fabrication. Now, I'm going to jump back over. We're going to be jarred a little bit here, but we're going to start researching the skip ship this time around, and after that's complete, we'll start looking into researching some recon armor and stuff like that. We want to try to balance it as much as we can. In preparation for our brand new aerial vehicles, once we finally get them researched, that is, we're actually going to be building ourselves some landing pads here. Now, these skip ships are basically VTOLs, meaning they don't need an actual, strip to launch off of, and they can actually just launch off a pad, which is perfect for a more compact capital, giving us more room for other structures. Once that was finally completed, I just kind of let the empire run. I let everyone go about their trading and their production and everything like that, basically just trying to collect some more taxes. You see, for us to get to our goal of this civil war, where we start bringing down the shattered settlements and towns and cities, we really need to conquer this southeastern continent and just basically settle there before we can actually attack. Otherwise, they're going to dig in deep and we'll never get them out. Now, lucky for us, with the massive size that our empire is, we are getting about 26,500 silver per tax cycle, which is every 5 days, which is absolutely incredible. I'm also just now realizing, I think earlier I said something about spending enough money for 2 tax cycles, which was true, but I also said something about it being almost 2 months. I got the time mixed up. Anyways, it's a lot of money though. After about a month and a half had passed, we had just enough money to go ahead and start settling in the southeastern part of the main continent. I'm not all that great with geography. Technically, I think this entire thing maybe could be just one big continent, kind of like a Pangea, but whatever. We are the Empire. It is what we say it is. As we were attempting to build cities and towns and villages that could rival that of the Shattered in their own territory, we noticed an unoccupied island in the southwestern sea. Jan Island, as it was known, basically completely barren except for some temperate forest hills in the east. But this might be the perfect place for us to settle a few encampments. What kind of encampments, you might ask? Well, the kind that consist of slave labor and forced labor, of course. Some forced labor camps and mines and farms and just all kinds of great stuff. Wait, don't take that out of context. This is only going to be for the worst of the worst, like the shattered enemies that we have, and maybe some tribal impids near Neanderthals, waster pirates. Moving on. Back at the capital, we were about to have the fight of our lives. An absolutely gigantic raid, a powerhouse raid, I should say, coming right for us from the Shattered. It does appear that they plan on sieging us, but they have many a recon and cataphract in their ranks. This will not be easy, friends. First things first, we're going to enact a little bit of counter-mortar fire with some of the shrapnel shells that we had purchased. I believe I said shrapnel, but I meant cluster. But that's the good thing about cluster shells. Once they hit the ground, they explode a little bit more, making it easier to hit your targets. After bombing these bastards into oblivion, we immediately called in our reinforcements right on top of them. Not only would they be able to kill quite a few of the Shattered soldiers, but they would also be able to separate them from the main group that was coming to attack our city. Obviously, this will separate them into two groups, making this fight much easier for us, but that doesn't mean that the fight itself is going to be easy. Many of them damn near came right through our gates, but thanks to our squad of ghouls, this was impossible for them to do. Our inhuman companions began ripping them to shreds right before our eyes. They had us completely surrounded though, and with this amount of enemies, our embrasures became less of an advantage to us and more of a liability. Because of this, we decided to pull the main city forces back and let more reinforcements handle this. Again, dropping right in on top of the heads of the Shattered soldiers. God, it feels good to give them a taste of their own medicine for a change. With their members beginning to fall to their knees in pools of their own blood, and our reinforcements and ourselves outmatching them, the Shattered had no other choice but to flee like the cowards that we knew they were. Run away, you usurping imposters, run away and hide, for we will find you in the very near future. Just like that, yet again, we were victorious, and the new Imperial Order was the victor once more again today, as they always shall be. But even with the battle over, the consequences still linger on. We ended up losing 3 of our 4 ghouls during this battle, though this wasn't exactly our biggest problem, as they could be revived. But Viet could not. Based on what I saw, it appeared that Viet attempted to sacrifice himself, jumping in front of a Shattered rifle for the Empress herself. A damn good man, a damn good soldier. Gone far too soon. Speaking of our cruel enemies, we would end up taking 2 of them prisoner, and we would immediately begin the rehabilitation process. If they don't want to succumb to the truth and join us though, they're always welcome as part of our ghoul squad. Even with the losses that we have endured here today, we did still end up getting quite a few resources from their siege camp, like reinforced barrels and components, as well as a smorgasbord of different types of weapons. Today we have felt our true first loss, our true first casualty. Though we ended up winning the battle, our hearts still grieve for our fallen ally. We will make the Shattered pay for this, and we shall make them rue the day that they decided to try to usurp our kingdom, our empire. It was during this time we were getting quite a few traders from the Outlands, and we would end up selling them many of our goods, like our artworks that we've been producing, as well as many different types of textiles, like plain leathers and blue fur and cloth, of course. You know how it is when we made some money. We also decided that it was about high time we started working on a tomb, a mausoleum, if you will, for our fallen. Vienne may have been the first, but surely he will not be the last. There are 2 things in this universe that will always be true. The new Imperial Order is the proper empire and true empire, and people die all the time. Everyone's time is limited on this planet, so of course we have to have a place to store our dead, for them to rest, if you will. Vienne had given his life for the Empress. The least that she could do was see to it that she was the one that brought him to his final resting place. as a sign of respect. We would also end up holding a funeral, of course, for all to pay their respects to VN, as well as to grieve together. We then held a dinner in his honor after that to talk about how he was worth 1,000,000 shattered soldiers. With our fallen laid to rest finally, we would then do some trading with an orbital combat supplier, purchasing a few bits and bobs of armor and some weapons such as a charge launcher. Think charge weaponry, but an RPG. We had also finally whipped up enough resurrection serums that we could bring our little ghoul squad back to life, including but not limited to the one that I forgot about that hates us and apparently still hates us. Since there appears to be no way to rehabilitate a ghoul, even if trying to force it into fighting for us, I suppose there's literally no way, we decided to chain it up and milk it for all it's worth. That sweet, sweet, succulent bioferrite, baby. I wanted to mention a couple of things as well. First and foremost, I've also been purchasing some dyes from the Outlanders because we've started dyeing our armor a nice shade of gray. Not only to differentiate ourselves away from the Shattered and their similar armor, but also to have a nice outfit to wear for their funeral. Yes, that's it. The second thing I wanted to mention, the knight that we had taken prisoner, our slave, I think in episode 1 or 2 or whatever, he has begun somewhat worshipping the monument, so much that he meditates and prays nearby it, as about a foot or so of snow pours down from the sky, and he doesn't seem to mind. A little bit weird. Moving right along though, we still have a civil war to start, do we not? So we are finally beginning to work on our skip ships. That's right, baby, we finally finished up the research, and it only took us a long time, a really long time actually, but we're not done waiting yet because these ships require a lot of resources and thus take a very long time to construct, so we'll check back later. In the meantime, the very next night we ended up having a small group of people, including one child who requested a very small sum of silver to buy back one of their friends from some kidnappers. Now normally the Empire would not negotiate with terrorists, pirates, or wasters, especially not wasters actually, but since we don't know who took this friend, we are just going to go ahead and give them some money. We are a generous empire. How can we be so kind and uncruel? I know. Oh look, our ships are finally done. That way we can bomb that shattered city. It's about damn time we finally started a worldwide civil war. We've been talking about it for long enough, haven't we? We are going to bomb the Shattered quite literally into the Stone Age, damn near into extinction, if we can manage it, that is. Let's get this party started. Up and away we go. You see, there's a pretty major shattered city just a little bit to the west of our capital city. It is quite literally one of the largest, if not the largest cities on the entire planet. The perfect target for our attack. Our initial bombing had killed, maimed, and/or injured several shattered soldiers and civilians, unfortunately. But if you want to make an omelet, you know the saying. Anyhow, though, with a good portion of the city burning to the ground, this felt like the perfect time to send in our ground forces. well, I think that takes care of that. Oh, well, actually, now I think that takes care of that. That's how you start a civil war, baby. You don't f with the real empire. Our armies began marching all across the lands, taking any and all imperial towns and cities that they could. To our surprise, they actually weren't having all that great of luck for this to be a sneak attack. As sneaky as we could be after blowing up one of their cities, the issue is the vast majority of their towns and cities that we're attacking were not actually managing to capture. Now, sure, we are killing plenty of the shattered soldiers when we're attacking, reducing their numbers, but their technology, their equipment, their weapons, their armor is just so much better than ours still, and I think that that is the real underlying issue here. To help us remedy this little issue, we would immediately begin research into recon armor. I do think that this is going to help us out quite a bit, although there are still many other things we need to do. One of which is upgrading all of our towns and cities. You see, when they're small like they currently are, with them being mostly level 2 and some even being level 1 towns and cities, they can't exactly raise armies to the size that we require to fight the Shatter. And that's exactly why we're going to begin upgrading them. Not only would we upgrade though, we would also end up making a new unit. Now, we don't currently have recon armor unlocked, and most of the tech we have is flak armor and things like that, but somehow, way, shape, or form throughout our research, it seems that we do have access to deserter tech as well as absolver armor, which is indeed slightly better than flak armor and simple helmets, of course. So we immediately started implementing these new units into our squads, and I thought that this would help out a lot. But as you can see here, we attacked multiple of the shattered settlements and only managed to capture one of them. It was worth a shot, and capturing one of them is better than capturing none of them, I suppose, but just barely, unfortunately. But we will not be stopped so easily. This is simply the beginning of this wide-scale, global, essentially, war, since we are the two massive powerhouses on the planet, and we will come out victorious, by God. Now, as we continue our extensive research into this type of armor that is required for us to win this damn war, I do want to show you a few things that are possible with armies of the size that we currently have. Not only can we try to capture enemy settlements and towns and yada yada yada, but we can also simply just raid them, attack them, and attempt to steal things from them. As you can see here, in a successful attempt, we ended up getting a Psy Trainer, a Field Hand, and a Hellcat rifle. Now, it's not exactly great, but it is something. However, not only are we getting different types of loot-like items and weapons and resources from these battles, but we're also filling out those labor camps on our little island here. And we treat them with much more respect and dignity than they ever would have treated us with. We give them food, we give them jobs, we give them a purpose. And when they get out of line... Oh, you were probably hoping for a happy ending for them. Well, this isn't fiction, okay? And the perfect world doesn't exist. I gotta tell you, one of the greatest things about having a global empire is definitely all the taxes. We didn't really build our treasury, or whatever we're calling it, to sustain this much cash. I think we're going to need to expand it. We also ended up getting a distress signal from the Outlanders, basically saying one of their cities was under attack at the moment, and they're requesting us to come and reinforce them. Now, this is a big deal because this will make the Outlanders our ally, but also they have quite a few rewards for us, one of which being Resurrector Mech Serum that we could theoretically end up giving to Viet. Very well, Outlanders, you drive a hard bargain. Not really, but we're on our way. Instead of sending troops on foot, which would take several days, if not over a month, I've decided to send them some air support. However, as our aircraft were flying to the city, the pirates ended up arriving well before we could. Now, this put us in a bit of a pickle because they started immediately killing Outlanders in the city, and we had no way to get there any faster. But luckily, we did have a few towns in the area who could drop pod in some troops. Oh, it's times like these that it pays to be a global powerhouse empire with a gigantic military with many an expendable troop. Our brave men and women would commence an absolute slaughter fest against these pirates, and eventually they were killed. Or at least the first group of them was. A second group would follow shortly thereafter, arriving in their own drop pods. A bit of a sneak attack against the city, but thankfully our air support had finally arrived. And that takes care of that. Actually, there were like 3 other groups, but they were a little bit smaller, and after dropping a few cluster bombs on them as well, we defeated them completely. And we ended up getting paid handsomely for our efforts, I must say, as we ended up getting plasteel, the armor skin gland, and the resurrector mech serum, as we were foretold, of course. But even better, just as we had hoped, we were now allies with the Outlanders, as this gave us a plus 100 relationship boost. You're welcome. Once our fine pilots had finally returned home and everyone was safe and sound, it was time for us to bring Viet back to life. Welcome back to the land of the living, my friend. We are ever so glad to see you. You're definitely going to need some time to recover from the resurrection sickness, as you've been dead for well, a long time. Your skin was completely rotted. I actually don't know how it came back. It looks like a few things did not come back though, like your ability to see through both of your eyeballs, and you also have dementia now. Sorry about that, but hey, at least you're alive. Right? Well, while Viet ponders his existence and meaning and probably wishes he was dead again, I wanted to let you know that we have expanded our treasury and or silver storage for the capital. We might have to keep doing this as we keep getting larger, not that that's really a problem. We also had our gore hole getting out of its containment cell, and I really only bring this up because this keeps on happening, damn it, with many of our entities, and it's getting to be very hard to not kill them since they're pretty tough. I think we need to try to build some defenses in their cells to keep this from happening more often, and or try to maybe help us put them down when they get out of hand, you know? As we were prepping to do so, we then noticed that we had a group of the false Imperials and some pig pirates that were gathering in the area, and it looks like they plan on trying to kill each other. Well, they picked the wrong spot outside of our capital's walls because we plan on killing both of them. Since most of our forces are out fighting the Imperials already, we are going to begin some airstrikes ourselves, and after that, it didn't really go to plan. We also started with some mortar strikes, which kinda sorta went to plan. At the very least, we ended up mangling a few limbs here and there. Given enough time, the 2 groups decided to try to attack each other, during which time we were still firing many a cluster shell at both groups. It seemed like the perfect opportunity since they're all in this little area. Eventually though, funny enough, the pig pirates killed enough of the Imperials that those poor bastards decided to try to flee. But their victory would be short-lived, as just like any game of couch co-op between you and your 2 siblings growing up, winner takes the champ, baby. And unfortunately for these pig bastards, the champ was us and our little fetid ghouls. Using their bioferrite flamethrower arms, I could smell the seared pork like bacon in the air through the rainy night. Delicious. Ripping and shredding and tearing them limb for limb. Could you imagine the fear of seeing these ferocious creatures coming for you after a fight with the false Imperials? Poor dumb saps. By the end of the night, one of the pig pirates managed to get away, but the others were all dead. Although the Imperials hadn't all died, and we even ended up taking 3 of them as prisoners. Now, 2 of them weren't exactly what we were looking for, to say the least, so we ended up taking them to the operation room, otherwise known as Jenny's House of Horrors, where they will now serve us as a gray lump of flesh that is unfeeling in our army. Ghouls. We turned them into ghouls, okay? Now that that little quarrel between the two parties was finally over and we came out victorious, as you could imagine, we started working on those turrets in each of our little milking rooms here to make sure that our entities are always in line, and if they're not, we'll put a bullet between their eyes. Our Imperial slave Azzy was also having some horrible visions and going on rambling about insane things. That's what you get for worshipping that damn monolith, you idiot. We also have a lot of money, basically. Our treasury here is once again completely full, and I know a lot of you probably get a little bit bored with the empire building, and if that's the case, I'm not quite sure why you're watching this video or this little mini-series, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing. As you can see, we have a lot of settlements within our near vicinity, right? Well, we are going to be upgrading them immensely with artillery outposts, since they're so close by. Giving them artillery outposts will mean that we can request fire support from these areas, having them fire shells into the capital city, but not within the city itself, you know what I mean, within the territory, to kill our enemies. We can also request this support anywhere else within their vicinity, and I think it'll help us a lot with taking out the Shattered. In particular, we plan on using anti-grain warheads, so I think it'll help. Since we're conquering a lot of Shattered territory, though, we need to keep the civilians that were once governed by them and used to that government happy under our government. But if they don't get happy, we go in and we crush them, right? So we need to also start building some automated defense forces to help us out with that. It also helps our military size, and just like with the artillery, it's going to help us take over Shattered territory, so doing this in the cities around the capital means that it was much easier for us to defeat the Shattered settlements around the capital as well, claiming them for ourselves. Now, of course, we can't do this with every single city. We don't have that much money, and we would end up going bankrupt trying to build internal defense forces and artillery in every city, at least so quickly. I had hoped that we would be able to end this civil war, begin it, and end it in this episode, thus ending this series once and for all, and finally claiming victory on the planet, but I guess we underestimated the Shattered. Something to look forward to, though. Back at the capital, we had a lone figure approaching the colony by the name of Abram. We decided to speak with him. He was mumbling about some type of scientific breakthrough and how he's a genius and just bragging about himself, but he did offer to join us here, and he would help us with our research and our mission, claiming to be a true pure-blooded Imperial like ourselves. So we accepted. Welcome aboard, little fella. You can go and research our milk machines a little bit if you like. We don't mind. He'll also be great for helping us out with other research projects, such as the recon armor, which we recently finished, but things beyond that, of course. Again, my friends, the capital city is coming along very, very nicely, though we didn't really add much to it today, as this episode was mostly focused on the Civil War and fighting off the Shattered and claiming their territory. I think next episode we'll most likely end up finishing up the city as well as the Empire, of course. At this point, we actually, I believe, have more towns, villages, settlements, and cities than the Shattered themselves, so they should now be on the back foot. I'm thinking next episode we start setting our sights maybe on some larger aerial vehicles, maybe some more explosive types of bombs, i.e. nukes, or we might even just create a great grand ghoul army and take over every single settlement that way. We'll see where it goes. Real quick though, I wanted to mention that Viet is actually back in action. Kinda. He still can't see, but we are letting him sweep up the throne room floor, so that's nice. We're good people, aren't we? I know. Alright, see you later. Hi there, I just want to pop in at the end of the video as per the usual, and thank you ever so much for watching. I very much appreciate it. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that other stuff that all the other YouTubers e-beg for. Much appreciated. I did want to say as well that if you guys are interested in seeing episodes like this one, as well as other episodes at least 1 to 2 days early, feel free to go ahead and get the Rat Specialist patron tier if you're interested in that sort of thing. And you can always get these at least a few days early. I tried to do it as early as possible. Sometimes it's just a day, so that kind of sucks. But if that's cool with you and you're interested in that, you should definitely check it out. Again, though, thanks for watching. I love you guys. See you later. Goodbye.